Hey friends, welcome back to the Gentle and Lowly Co podcast. I'm Addie, your host, and today we'll be talking about how to step out with faith into God's calling. And today on the podcast, our guest is Lindsey Lamar. So Lindsey, first, just welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. Hello, everyone listening. It's such an honor to be here. I'm a big fan of Addie. So
That's so kind, and I'm so thankful for just this new friendship and just the blessing that technology can have, just connecting believers wherever we are. But first, for our friends, who are new here, who are listening, just share a little bit about what this current season of life looks like for you.
yes, so I live in Austin and I'm getting married in a few weeks. So life is pretty chaotic. But I'm also an author. I've been working on projects and it's really just been a lot of trying to take myself off the pedestal, I guess. That's what my season of life looks like right now. And just leaning into God's plan for me through all this change and really surrender. That's where I'm at. And it's also spring here, so the weather's great, so life is getting happier. Things
Yeah.
are going well.
That is so true. And we had some friends a couple episodes ago, Moving Works. They're also in Austin, Texas. And I guess I didn't get to tell you this before we started recording, but I did my internship with Kamek in Austin, Texas.
Oh,
And so
cool.
I love Texas and Barton Springs and good
Yes.
tacos. So it is very nice though when it starts to warm up. So you're lucky.
Our 2 weeks of good weather are here, so
Yeah.
I'm feeling the joy.
That is so nice and encouraging for our friends in Indiana. Just snowed last night a little bit,
Yeah.
just a tiny bit. But I think that's really encouraging. And congratulations to you and your fiance, a new season of life to embark on together. That's so exciting. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
We'll definitely be praying for you guys as well. So fun, and just to hear all about the work that you're doing. We're going to get into that, but to kick things off, we're going to do the music of the week. So for this week, Lindsey, what was, on your playlist this week?
I love this question. This is so fun. So my song that I pulled out was called Remains by Olivia, Georgia, and I wrote down the lyric that that stood out to me and it says, do you want me to just recite it? That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay,
I'm gonna
great.
read some lyrics this week too. If this is
Great.
perfect.
It says, I was a girl in the window wrapped up in blues. You said, start running towards me. I said, I'm scared, but I'll trust in you. And for me, that kind of just encapsulates my testimony and what we're going to talk about today of just, I feel like before I met Jesus, or even after I met him, I was sort of just the woman in the window, which for our bookish friends is not an AJ Finn reference to a really popular thriller book. But it was just those simple lines remind me without Jesus, I'm not really experiencing life. I'm just sort of locked behind the window watching it and trying to control everything myself and to really just step out of my comfort zone of my box and to surrender that control is where real life is and real joy. And I don't know, I loved that lyric and all of her music is so good. Underrated queen right
Yeah.
there.
Oh my goodness. We all have to check out Olivia, Georgia. That sounds like a song I'm gonna listen to tonight when I have to do some driving. I think that's awesome and such a good reminder and that's why I love this segment. I've told this I feel like almost every week where music it can be something we have on the background, but God speaks through it so intentionally. And
Mhm.
that's such a good reminder I can think about this week where it's oh yeah, there could be moments where I try to take control or be oh, I'm gonna do it this way, and the Lord's actually, Addie, let's try it this way. This might be a healthier way, but also just trusting in him that yeah, when we walk into obedience and we're I don't feel qualified, I don't feel equipped, he's able to give us that strength if we trust in
Mhm.
him and we keep our eyes fixed on him. And so, yeah, you think, man, such a simple lyric, but there's so much beauty and so much depth. And oh my goodness, I love that so much. But yeah, Olivia Georgia, she might be my new favorite artist.
She's so good. Indie, chill vibes, but
Good.
so good. I want to hear yours too,
Yeah,
'cause I feel like
absolutely.
you've got some good stuff.
Okay, there is a couple different ones this week. I it just man, so on Spotify, you play a song and then sometimes they'll just keep playing the right thing and just it's
Yes.
not from a playlist, it just does it and I'm like, I love this so much.
Spotify is where it's at. It
That's
beats
where it
Apple
is.
Music.
I'm sorry, Apple Music friends, but we talked about Spotify Wrapped and all the things. It's my favorite. Okay, it is one of my favorite days of the year. I've said that before, but we just celebrated National Pancake Day, which I said is also one of my favorite days. But
Love.
they're like independent holidays that are like so much fun. So Spotify did such a good job. This week, this first one is called One Good Thing, and it's by Bent Tree Worship. First, it's really cool, like the art, the album cover, it is like roll that stone away, and it's like, wow, how perfect Easter's coming.
Yes.
So it's already getting me excited to like listen to the rest of that album and just also like looking ahead to Easter. And we just started Lent this week, Ash Wednesday and that practice, encourage our friends to, look into that and stuff. And so, even music is just a really good reminder just to set our heart, and our mind on things above.
Mhm.
And especially if we are refraining from something for Lent to be like, oh, maybe I can, put some worship back into that space where you have some time.
Yeah.
So such a good reminder that I'm reminding myself of. But one good thing, this song is just like, I feel like is such a good anthem of just remembering even kind of what you're saying, Lindsay, like he is the one true source of life and he is where
Mhm.
everything flows from, where it comes from. And so I'm going to read some lyrics. It's kind of longer, but I just was like, words are so good and
Yeah.
we both, being authors or writers love words. So hang tight with us, friends, but it's so good. So it starts the song, One Good Thing. Jesus, you're my one good thing, the source of every gift life brings. It's always been you. I believe, help me in my unbelief. All these things my eyes have seen lead me to you. Still, my heart to trust you are all I need. Holding on to you as my one good thing. And then I won't read the rest of it. It is pretty quite long, but the first part of it is in every season, have my attention. I will remember the goodness of God. And it's just like this anthem and this declaration of like, I will remember he is my one good thing. And even in the beginning, the sentence of, I believe, help me in my unbelief. Like there can be seasons and areas in our lives where we're like, yeah, Lord, I'm trusting you. Like absolutely.
Mhm.
But also if you can be like in a winter season or season where you're like not seeing a lot of fruit or a lot of growth
Right.
or seeing unanswered prayers, we need to ask the Holy Spirit to encourage us in those
Mhm.
things. So all of that to say, go listen to this song and like, have like some peaceful pause, to be like, okay, I have some time to actually listen to it. But it encouraged my heart so deeply. And I think it's also a contender for Song of the Year, probably too.
Wow.
So
It is
funny.
already there.
I was already there in January, Lindsay. It's so funny. Every week I'm like, this is it, but we'll see. We'll see. But it is that good. It's high up on my list. But the second one, Benjamin William Hastings, he's one of my favorite artists as well. I got to see him live in like his first Nashville show last year. My mom and I went, so much
Oh,
fun.
fun.
But this song is in the studio, so it is kind of cool where it's like, kind of an acoustic set and just like stripped down. But this song is such a throwback. It's Lord, I Give You My Heart. And if you grew up in church, or even if you're new to church and you're like, oh, this, you might have heard this song where it's just like, take me back to the heart of worship and like that true surrender, that true devotion. And I just think of like, man, what a beautiful way to like almost start every day, with this
Mm.
song, a reminder of like a declaration and anthem of really reminding ourselves of like, okay, everything that I can put my hands to, like, can I put it back to you as a posture of worship? It's just a really good reminder and perspective,
Yeah.
especially, like I said, we got some snow, and so we might not be outside as much and things. So it's like, okay, even in the ordinary things, he is with us and everywhere we go. So I feel like we have some really strong contenders this week for music, which is really fun and exciting. But for theme of the week, Lindsay, what stood out for you this week as you're going throughout your days?
Oh gosh. Like I said, I am about to get married, and for me, it has just been a challenge of like putting myself on a pedestal. I mean, there's the classic like bridezilla tropes and like
Yeah.
wanting it to be all about you, and I think God has been continually reminding me like this isn't about you. Um, this is about the relationship I've blessed you with. This is about the people I've blessed you with that are going to celebrate about you. This is not about like how perfect your dress fits or the flowers. And
Yeah.
I have really struggled with like putting myself on that altar, just coming to my phone first thing in the morning and like wanting to do all of these things. And instead of like turning to God, and I've also been reading the Bible chronologically with Tara Lee Koppel, which
Oh, yes.
amazing, love her.
Yes. Yes.
And right now I'm in the stories where Moses is leading the people out of Egypt, and they're at a point where they're like begging to go back to Egypt, and they keep sinning and they're falling short just constantly. They're not focused on like the gifts that God is promising them. They just like are just constantly like putting other things ahead of him, whether that be like their own jewelry or idols. And I think uh, God just keeps showing them his grace. He's like, yeah, we're going to correct, but I'm also showing you so much grace. Like, I'm going to give you what you don't even deserve here. And that's what he's been doing in my life recently. I've just been seeing that grace
Mm,
consistently when I definitely don't feel like I'm earning it, and we can never earn it. Like, there are always seasons where you feel like, oh yeah, I'm on fire, and you think like you might be earning it, but
mm.
genuinely it's reminded me like I don't deserve this and I can't earn it. Like, I just get the grace and like try to focus on what a gift that is instead of constantly like putting myself at the head of it. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I really do love that. I think it's such a good reminder, and it can feel like, I've walked alongside a lot of my friends getting married, and everything is coming at you at once, and you're like, okay, there's a lot of good things in the season, but also my friends have said it's the most stressful time, which
Yes.
is challenging. And you're like, okay, how can this wedding day be a representation of Christ and the gospel,
Mhm.
but also not focusing so much on the day and focusing on your marriage, with your fiance, and just like really walking in that plan that God has for you to go on mission for the gospel together. It's such a beautiful thing. But yeah, I mean, because the event revolves around you, it can be easy to be like, okay, all these things have to be perfect. You want to show up well for the people.
Mhm.
You want to love them well too. But yeah, I mean, that is such a good reminder just to remember, like, even when we feel like all the responsibility is on ourselves over trying to strive and like earn that
Mhm.
favor or earn that grace from the Lord, it's a good reminder that, the gospel is the free gift, and it's always going to be that. And it is by grace that we're saved. And
Mhm.
that fruit is going to come and abound naturally out of our love and devotion from Him, but we can't rush His grace, by sitting with Him. I feel like that does actually segue really perfectly into my theme of the week, where, I feel like we have long winters up here, not to harp on that too much, but there is just the beauty and simplicity and slowing down and noticing the details and just like the ways that God is working, in like the fabric of our lives, and like He's inviting us into all these moments. And like, it's a new month, March. And so like flipping back through my photos for February, and I'm like, oh, I think I want to post these. Like, these are just such simple moments, but like,
Mhm.
hanging out with Kodak, my dog, or we go play in the snow,
Oh.
or I make waffles, and it's just really nice. Like, it's just a sweet thing. And slowing down and just like noticing these small gifts or these God winks from Him. And yeah, to not rush His grace. And like that is really the beauty is knowing Him and walking with Him. And so I feel like that's so encouraging, but all the
Mhm.
more reason just to pay attention to those patterns, to the things of our weeks, and to pay attention to what He's doing. So I think
Yeah,
that's really good, really encouraging.
I love that.
And we're going to talk about stepping out with faith into God's calling, which I really feel like, we have to remind ourselves, of our identity in Christ, before we can enter into that calling. Because if we're trying to do all these things, we're going to get confused and be like, wait, is it this or that? And so we really have to have the identity rooted in Him first. So we're going to move into our main topic. And Lindsay, I feel like it's such an incredible story of like your testimony and how you found Jesus. And I'm so excited just to hear even more about it. And, just following like your journey of like the work you're doing now, which is very different. And, being an author. So before that big step of faith, though, we have to back up to the beginning with your testimony. So how did you come to know Jesus personally?
Yes, thank you for everything you said. And I'm super excited to share my testimony with you guys. So, going back like to the way back, grew
Yeah.
up in a Christian home, and I was small East Texas town. Like Christianity was sort of just the moral foundation around where I grew up. And I think for me, like it became just a supplement to like my lifestyle. It was not my foundation. So when I went and grew up and did all the things and I went to college, I just was like, okay, this is my time. Growing up in a really small town, I think you kind of look out and you're like, there is so much. I know you can relate. There's so much the world has to offer, and you're just like dazzled, especially at that age when you haven't like seen anything or experienced anything. And so I just like sort of slowly turned away until I was just like further and further to where God and Jesus was not a factor in my life at all. And it wasn't really until a year ago, almost exactly. So still on my like newer side that I really came back to Jesus. And Matthew 18:12 says that he will leave the 99 to come back for his one. And I feel like that was me because I knew, even like reading my old journals from when I was a kid, which I've done in the past year, like Jesus was my king. Like I read those and like he had me, and then I just like turned my back. So he came back for me last year. He left the 99 to come back, and that was sort of my experience, which I know we'll get into detail here, but
Yeah. Oh man. I'm so encouraged even just like by that start of your story and just reminding ourselves truly like we can never run away from God's plan and like we're never too
Mhm.
far gone. And I have people, we all have people we're praying for personally who are in our family or our dear,
Mhm.
dear friends, and we're like, Lord, like would you unharden their heart and let them see the gospel? What I do love that you said, the 99. And I didn't even realize it until now, but I was like, kind of redecorating or like reorganizing some things like on my bookshelf
Mhm.
out in like my like family room there. And I have this wooden, I guess it's a carving of a shepherd from Israel when I went like 2 years ago. And
Wow.
it has, the one sheep, Jesus is, well, it's a shepherd, but I think picture Jesus carrying him, on his back, and then another sheep
Mhm.
at his side. And it's just, I just thought of that reminder like another day ago of like, yeah, Jesus is my shepherd. He will carry
Mhm.
me when I need to be carried, like when we do, or we're walking right alongside of him. And so what a just a beautiful picture to be reminded of that he will go to the ends of the earth. He did, and he'll do it again for us.
Yeah, and I don't remember where I heard it. It was probably a sermon, but they talk about how, like, in biblical times when a shepherd was like a key person, like it was a normal job, that they would often break the leg of the
Yeah.
sheep so
Yeah.
they wouldn't keep running away.
Yes.
And it was so out of love, but it was like pain as well. And I think about that all the time too. Like, it took so much, like, pain to get me to be like, yes,
Yeah.
this is who I'm following. But
Oh man. Yeah.
so good, so good.
Yeah, that's so good. And like it's hard to be like, why is this happening? Or I'm in pain, Lord. Like this isn't good, right?
Hmm.
But it actually is for a benefit. And I can think back to, oh man, so many times, even last year, where I'm like, what is going on? But we see a different dependence upon him, or we see the like what needs to be pruned to then bear fruit. And so that's,
Hmm.
oh man, such a good reminder. So you got to college, so kind of like after that, that's where we pick up.
Yes, we really pick up like a little over a year ago.
Okay.
And at this point, I had kind of turned to new age spirituality. I was like very into that, messing with all kinds of like divination, all of that thing. And what's scary is like it actually works, like you are messing with the realm you can't see. And I thought that that was the truth. And in Austin, it's so confusing sometimes. Like you'll walk into a smoothie shop and they'll have scripture posted on the counter and a Buddha at the front door. And like you sort of like think like, oh, everything is true. And like that's very much in like the stage of life that I was in.
Yeah.
And because I was sort of, I mean, I have no idea what entities or anything I was, really truly
Mm.
working with there, but I think my life was sort of just coming into shambles, and on the outside, everything looked perfect.
Mm.
But I was so stressed, and I started having these like really demonic kind of dreams that I was selling my soul, just all the time, and they were really redundant, and those kind of came like in tandem. But after like that, I wasn't working in like necessarily a flashy job or anything like that. I was working in HR technology, nothing evil or wrong with HR
Yeah.
technology, but I was just super miserable. I was in a
Mm.
toxic environment. My relationship with Colin, my almost husband, was really suffering, and greed was basically just what I worshipped. I mean, I was in a state of just constant lack. There was always more to have and more to give. And I was about to publish my second book, and I was having just a really hard time at work. And Colin and I, our relationship was going like through just a breaking point. Both of our priorities were out of whack. Like it was work comes first and money comes first. And it's so funny, like when you are misaligned and money stops being a tool and starts becoming an idol, like how quickly your life just kind of crumbles. And so I was at this breaking point and we were fighting, and I remember telling him like we should go on a vacation, like a nice vacation. And he looked at me, and he had never expressed interest before or anything like that, and he was like, "No, I think we need to go to church." And I was like, we have some strong opinions. We have been to like some churches that weren't necessarily great, just like Christmas Eve services and stuff like that, very theatrical. And I just had like strong opinions, and he was like, let's give it a try. And I knew that I wanted to marry this person. I was like, okay. And I remember praying, like, God, like, lead us gently if this is real. Like, don't break us apart, please. Like,
Yeah.
and we showed up and we got to experience Jesus together for the first time. And I don't even like really know what to say other than like we walked in and God was there and he spoke directly to us, just about everything. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. Like getting to have that, because he could have so easily said like I have to take you apart to lead you to me, and
Mm.
he was so graceful with us. And it was my prayer was like, if you if you're going to do this, please don't break us. And it's just been so beautiful, having that experience like with him as well.
Oh my goodness. I mean, oh, the emotions are coming for me. I mean, that's like it's so beautiful in the sense of like, I mean, just because we, well, okay, first, there's absolutely this battle we cannot see. That is going
Mhm,
on, and there can be lies and distractions or just busyness or greed, all these different things that can become idols. And such a great resource, my friend and our friend Lydia, who was on the podcast a couple weeks ago, she just finished reading Jonathan Pokuta's book, Your Story Has a Villain, and it talks about
mhm,
spiritual warfare. And so we'll link that in the show notes just because that's a book on my reading list, and he's such a
mhm,
good trusted advisor. But I'm just also thinking of like, wow, like praise God in that moment that Colin was like, what you said of like, oh, we just need to get away from all this stress, all this chaos, and just go, to Fiji on a beach or Mexico and just leave it all
mhm,
behind. And like everything will be perfect. But that also isn't reality. You still come
mhm,
back to it. But praise the Lord that like that prompting for church, like, and that was not your norm, totally opposite. And
mhm,
that instead of ignoring it, you like God led you guys to life together.
mhm,
Like,
mhm.
and that just like encourages my heart so much because, you can think like, man, like what we're supposed to do. And, we think about, oh, we just have to work harder. I need to rest. I need to do this or focus on all these things and doing it right. But really, it's going back to our creator and knowing, why we're created, what is that purpose. And so I'm encouraged that, man, you walk into church and you feel the presence of God and you see the gospel rightly, like
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest thing. And it does gently like impact your heart, but at the same time, totally flips your world upside down of like, this is what I've been searching for. So man, I am so encouraged for you and Colin. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so crazy to talk back on it because happened so slowly and then all at
Mm,
once because our lives just from that day just kind of started to transform. We just kept going back and like even just being near other Christians was changing our lives. Like
mm,
we didn't even know like what we were getting into and then just being next to whether it was getting involved in a Bible study or next to the blessings of other like true believers, it impacted our lives so much.
mhm.
And he just kept revealing himself as like the one truth, which was really life changing for me coming from a place, like I told you, Austin has all
Yeah.
of these, everything can coexist. And I was very sold on that. And I think once I said, okay, Jesus, you're the one truth, like everything in our lives just changed. Our priorities changed. Um, and we decided to fully commit to Christ. So we got engaged after church one day and we said, God, we give you our marriage and the rest of our lives. And it was all kind of like in one unison moment. But since then, we were like, this is how we're doing things now. We're not going back to the old way. And our relationship is like come alive. It's literally like raised from the dead almost. I mean, it's been so beautiful, like recommitting our lives or committing our lives to Jesus and just coming there. And I saw how much it did for our relationship, but I was still holding on to like other pieces of my life, like my greed, where I was like, okay, God, I've given you my relationship and all of these other things, and we're going to do all that your way. But like, I still had this desire for like control and like wealth that I was not giving to God. So I was like waking up from my job, just feeling like physically sick. People were telling me, you look horrible. Like, what's going on? And I was having these dreams, like just constantly that still, that I was selling my soul, that something was wrong. And I launched my book and I didn't really enjoy it because my workplace was so toxic. Like, I got engaged the day after, like I couldn't eat because I was so stressed at work and like the book launched and I was just like crying because of work and I just was so like committed to the money and it wasn't that it was an evil or bad job, but God was just like making it clear to me like, hey, you need to give this part of your life up too. You can't just pick and choose, you know?
Mm, yeah. Mm. Oh man. I think that's a really good reminder too of like I mean regardless of how long I mean we've been following I mean, we can all slip back into it and that's like focusing on Christ why it's so important to meditate on his word and to know him to like have that time really first thing in the morning and to be like no I'm going to point towards you because it's easy to be like oh well every area do I really mean that like we can
Mhm.
just be like, oh, well, no, this is going good, and think like, oh, no, it's okay. Like, you can do everything else, but actually, I don't want to talk about this thing over here. I mean, it's as simple as, no, we're not gonna pray about that or bring it to our friends or our people or trusted advisors and stuff. And so, it's a really good discipline, just to have even that like that daily confession with the Lord, but also with other people like weekly and
Mhm.
stuff, and to not have, our hardened hearts because we can make anything an idol, I think, if we stare at it long enough. I mean,
Yes, I mean,
that's all
so
it
true.
it's so true. And so it's like, yeah, focus on his truth to replace that. Yeah.
I just had so much greed and like disbelief about money. And I mean, my parents sacrificed a lot to send me to college to get a degree that I maybe like didn't necessarily like see the path down, which I chose the degree. They didn't choose it for me or anything. But I mean,
Mhm.
they sacrificed so much. I was riding with this guilt of like, if
Mhm.
I like leave this prescribed path, like I'm gonna have nothing and everyone's gonna be so disappointed in
Mhm.
me. But I just felt God telling me, like, you love books, you love writing them, and there's people that I want to connect you with, that I want you to like help with their journey and writing words, just like Christian books, things like that, and just to keep writing mine. But I was like so unfaithful And I just was telling God, like, pretty much, I don't trust you. I trust my paycheck. And I kind of was like also prey to this like boss girl
Mm. Oh
image,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
independent that the
Mhm.
media
Yeah.
sells you. Like you need to be independent. Like you can't trust men. You can't do anything. And like it was just eating my life away. I had like no faith in really anything but myself in that area of life. And so at this point, I had like stopped all of my new age, woo woo
Mhm.
things, the
Yeah.
crystals and tarot, all of that,
Yeah.
meditation. And the dreams that I was having were still just like
Mm.
very prominent. I like didn't want to sleep. And then I didn't even want to get out of bed in the morning because there was work. So it was like
Yep.
just didn't want to really do
Oh,
anything. I was just
yeah.
totally numb. And I lived for like Sunday, just
Mm.
experiencing Jesus and being like, yes, Jesus, I want to do all of these things. But then going into my week, I was like, okay, I'll see you again on Sunday, kind of.
Mm.
And I was in this Bible study group. I'm still in it. And Colin was seeing like how it was eroding my life and just got so much prayer over me. And I finally felt like empowered. I had this group of people who were like, you need to like step out into your calling and trust that God has something better for you. Like this is not the life that God has for you. And they told me, confusion is from the devil. Like God will never confuse you. And I was living in such a like confused space of like, what do I do? Do I do this? And they were like, God will be clear. And so
Mhm.
I finally had this dream. I decided I was going to quit. And then the night before I quit, I had this dream that I was walking down this path, which was my recurring dream, but all these people were on the side, like offering me anything I could have ever wanted, like flowers and cars and houses. And I remember I was like on this little dirt path, which for me, this was so clearly from the Lord. And I refused. And I said, no, like, I don't want that. It's not where I'm headed. That's not my final destination, kind of. And I kept walking. And then I woke up, and this was the morning I was supposed to quit, And I was like, okay, I know I've got to do it. I've got a dream from God, literally. Like, when does that happen? Most of my dreams are stupid. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and was like, okay, I had the meeting set, and then I got a call at work, and they offered me like a sum of money to not to stay, but just out of the blue, bonus. And it was at the time I was launching this book, which
Mhm.
personally is expensive. Self-funded projects are always expensive.
Mhm.
And I was just like, man, that would be great. Maybe I could stay for a little bit longer. And I started to like get so enticed by this. And
Mm.
out of the blue, my old boss from another job called me and she's just like, randomly, I felt the need to check in. We had never talked about faith before. This woman is amazing. Her name is Taja, and she tells me she's a Christian, and she sort of like came out and told me, I left corporate to pursue my purpose. And I feel like I need to tell you the same thing. This is like when I'm quitting, right? So it's like
Literally.
God is like, this girl is
Oh.
she needs to be spoken to so directly. Like, I just have to keep being so direct,
Yeah.
which shows his grace because I
Yeah.
was like so
Mhm.
doubtful. But I remember she told me, like, word for word, remember, there's always going to be another bonus or more money.
Mm.
And that day I had just been offered more money, and she was
Literally.
like, don't take it, like, basically. And
Oh.
thank God I listened. Truly, thank God, because those were like his words, and I quit. And I turned down the bonus, obviously, but I quit, and it was like my first real big experience following God's path for me.
Mhm.
Even though like there's nothing wrong with technology or HR, God just said, I've called you to something new, and like you need to trust me. And every day I still am learning how to worship him and trust his path over like financial, like there's some comfort in just being in a job where have an expected income, like being an author and all of that, it like fluctuates, and his plan has been so good. But I actually wanted, if it's okay, to share something that was in my Bible study the day that I quit.
Yes. Yes,
um
absolutely. All of these little, they're not little things, but they're all pieces. that are building that faith of like, okay, reinforcing, yes, Lord, this is who you are and what you call me to do. So yes, absolutely.
Yes. And like he was so direct with me. He was like, this girl is never gonna get it unless I tell her 100 times.
Just tell her straight up.
It's from this book called Milk and Honey by Cambria Joy, and
Oh,
it's
yes.
love, love. And she said, what do we really want to do? We must first be who we really are, a new creation in God Himself. Because it's then we find we don't just write, we become an author. And I was like, okay, could you be more direct? Like
Literally.
becoming an author as a writer. And it says, what we do flows from who we are. The dream of doing and being that's in our hearts begins when we let Him into ours. And I thought, like between my boss calling me and the dreams and this, like God was like, this girl, she's she's gonna have doubts. She needs to be like, it needs to be so obvious.
Yeah.
And it was to me because I was so baby in my Christianity at this point, and I just God was so graceful and being like, we'll be redundant if we need to be.
And that's a good thing. I mean, I can think of times where, you're still like, okay, I heard this, but I need him to say it again. Sometimes we can be on the opposite side of like, oh, we'll
Mhm.
pray for another sign actually, but he's like, no, I've already given it to you. But also like how intimately he knows us. You think about like Psalm 139, he knows all the inward parts and our thoughts and like how we're wired. And he's like, no, I love Lindsay. Like, she needs, like, this is his kindness and his grace to be like,
Mhm.
okay, this is my daughter, and I want her to walk with me so much. And he's just like, okay, here's another tap. Here's another one. Here's another one to really, like, let her be, like, to let you see it. He's like, out of his love
Mhm.
for you. I'm so encouraged by all of those things strung together. And also that book, I got to read that book too that you mentioned. We'll link that too for our friends because man, I think that's so encouraging just to see, yeah, when we step out into our gifts, into what he wants us to do. But it is by that line. I feel like I need to repeat that at the end. What we do flows from who we are. The dream of doing and being, all that's in our hearts begins when we let him into ours. I mean,
Mhm.
I even read something like that this morning of like, it's not about you. It doesn't start with you. It starts with him. And so, man, I'm so encouraged by all of that. And just thank you just so much for all of your vulnerability and just sharing your story. I mean, so many friends I know are going to be deeply encouraged for the people we're praying for or for that person if it's that friend and you're here, like just be like, man, there's a space for you at the table too. Like the
Mhm.
gospel is so big. Like God paid for all of it and he wants you to accept him as well, friend. So yeah.
Right, right. And I feel like the story, like in when I look back on it, it seems so dramatic. Like there were dreams and these moments, but in my day
Yeah.
to day, it's so subtle and like the voice of
Wow.
God is so subtle and like it's so quiet but loud and through scripture. And I think as I mature, like I don't need these ginormous like
Mhm.
look at me moments. But yeah,
Yes.
I think that when I was first, maturing as a Christian, I needed just like the drama to really be like, yes, this is real. But I just want to like encourage listeners that the day to day, God is not gonna like necessarily speak down from the heavens every day. Like you'll just start to learn that He's there, and feel His nudges. Because I know my testimony, like in retrospect, can sound like God speaks to me so clearly all the time, and that's not necessarily true as I mature.
hmm No, I think that's a really good reminder and I remember just in our my young adult group like one of the biggest questions was what is God's voice? Like how do I hear him
Mhm.
speak and like is that really him? And that is such a good reminder of like okay, when he's trying to call us to him and to walk away from this old life, we were so far, like we're
Mhm.
in that way even if we're following him, there can be this other side where it's like, no, okay, you gotta still follow all of me, entirely.
Mhm.
And so he has to speak loudly. He's like, I guess gotta like shout it to her to like get it because I can think of moments like that of like, oh, I've taken control, or I'm like, no, actually my way's better. I'm gonna do this in my own
Right.
strength. we all have those stories in our lives and we think, oh shoot, it didn't work. Or thank praise the Lord, he saved me before making that decision. And you say, wow, that's definitely God's protection. But I think like the encouragement too is like it's such a sweet gift that we can truly know God. Like we can know his voice and know how he speaks to us. And you're absolutely right, Lindsay, that it won't be maybe these grand grand things or these gestures, but I can't help but think again of like how we even connected. I filled out like your online form thing for like, indie publishing and like word count and stuff. And then I get an email from you and I'm like, what? This is awesome. And so like that to me, and we've talked about that before, of like those were like those taps or those God winks and nudges of like, hey, I'm still working across the entirety of the earth, in our
Mhm.
nation, but also like in the entire globe, and to see like, wow, there are people set apart for me. And also just I'm reminded of like, your background of like, in Austin and just, there's so many, I feel like so many things of confusion of like,
Yeah.
oh, it's all the same, it's all good. And when we see like, no, Jesus, he is the one. And so I think also out of his kindness, he was like, I'm gonna speak to her so clearly so she knows that I am the real true God. Yeah, I am who I say I am. And we can go back to scripture to that. And so man, like, yeah, I feel like this conversation is just like engulfed in God's grace and his kindness to you.
Mhm.
And we can all
Mhm.
take that encouragement just to remember that he's with us and in the big momentous, steps in faith and also the really small daily disciplines of faith too. So,
Right,
yeah,
right.
man,
That's so good.
so good and so encouraging. And I feel like you talked about, the type of work you were doing before entering into the indie, publishing and author space. So I feel like that's encouraging for our friends to, just be reminded about and to hear of like we can be in one career and God can totally switch us to another thing and be like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm not qualified, I didn't go to school for this, or like, how can I do
Right.
that? But if he, is speaking to us and he's tapping us, like also tapping us on our heart but also like with that community around you and being like, actually, I see something in you that I think can glorify God and pull that out of us. So I'm
Mhm.
really glad. I feel like we already answered like our second question. And I think that's so awesome and encouraging just for our friends to be like, God will sometimes call us to make like a 180 and be like,
Right.
go do this thing and like get in the boat and figure it out with him. But yeah, such a sacrifice and a huge step of faith for you to quit your job on the day of the bonus and all those things and for your old boss to call you and also as you're publishing a book, I know that like
Yes.
family, it's huge. So man, just to reinforce just your faith in that, like I'm deeply encouraged and I know our friends will be too. So, so good. So as you've, been walking with Jesus and again, we're all daily, it's day by day with grace, but how have you seen, previous steps of obedience as you've been like, okay, Lord, I'm going to give you everything. That's a big step of obedience. But now, making those smaller ones, especially as you and Colin approach your wedding, there's a million things to do and stuff. But also in your work, how have you seen just the Lord guide you, to become an author and serve other authors, in this type of work now?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I feel like God taught me to trust him. I think I leaned in actually more to trust him in like the big things, like big moments like life change, engagement, leaving a job. And then I really had to like learn with a lot of discipline over this past year, still learning how to just trust him every day with like the less drastic moments of like that are not as chaotic necessarily. So that has just been a journey. And I think in writing, you asked about becoming an author, and both of my books I wrote before I was really following Christ. My first book was dark. It's a thriller, and it came from like a place of just like a lot of like darkness in my life, feeling like I really was going through it and put it on the page, published it, all of that. And my second book, I was also not following Jesus yet when I wrote it, but it's a little more fun and lighthearted at least.
Yeah.
But during this time, it was kind of crazy because I told you it happened slowly and then all at once. And there was just so much stress. I was releasing a book and then within like a week of the book release, I was engaged, and then we like committed our life to Christ like that week as well. And so you like think of all that once, and the timeline is just kind of like an explosion.
Yeah.
And God just sort of showed himself to me through my publishing experience. Even though my book and when I was writing it, like I wasn't
Mm.
turned to him, he was like, okay, you're mine now. I'm going to show you how big I am, basically. And I published independently. I didn't have support or anything like that. And I just remember like the story of David, and, he showed me that, like, you can be the least of these, and if you have me on your team, like, you're good. And what he really was showing me was to actually step out into client work at that time and help other authors write books and help them publish books. And so I started freelancing in the midst of all of this after I left my other jobs. And God kind of just showed me, like, hey, we're going to do this for me now. You're going to play on my team. And immediately, as sort of, those God winks, my first like biggest two clients were Christian authors trying to get Christian workout, which will be out soon, which I'm so excited about.
So good.
But they were like ministering, and God was showing me like, hey, your expertise, like, even though you're a mystery author, like, I didn't seek these people out. Like, how was I supposed to know how to connect with them as a mystery author or anything like that? But God showed me like the skill set I gave you through this experience, like, can glorify me starting today. And that was just something that just reinforced faith for me, because it was so beautiful and so random at the same time. Like, it could only have been from God. So
Mm.
I stepped into that work and started showing him I trust him more than my paycheck, and to help other believers put their work out. I mean, there's just like no way to see it without God's hands all over it. When I stated, like, I'm a mystery author, there's no way that I was going to be of use to these people. And it just ended up becoming like a beautiful partnership that only his grace could have like really provided in all of the unlikeliness.
Yeah. I'm so encouraged by just like again seeing all of the different avenues that God was working in. You stepped out in faith, and you're right. I mean, like God is so much bigger than us. And like you would say, like someone looking at it on paper, literally on paper, but like those are total opposites. Like they cannot, how could they intersect or cross? And it's like, man, God will bring the right people at the right time or the right job at the right time. Like I think we talked about this, yeah, last week with our friend Josh, and oh my goodness, like God, his provision is so much greater than ourselves. Like sometimes we think, oh, I have to take it all on. I have to do this. I have to find a job. And there is, the resourcefulness and doing our part
Right.
too. But at the same time, like you said, that self-discipline, a lot of learning, a lot of stuff on your part as well. But then trusting that, okay, Lord, like I'm gonna put myself out there in a way and put my resources or, what I can do, my gifts and be, trusting that you're going to bring the clients and that
Mhm.
these systems are going to work, to glorify you. That's just wild and also so incredible and also exciting that the two, clients you're working with that their books or projects are going to come out this year. Like that's, we're very soon. That's really exciting. I'm sure our friends will be excited for that too and support in that way as well. So, so cool. So, you really feel like there is this burden, for authors and to encourage them, with your expertise. Because I think anyone who writes a book, I mean, it is not for the faint of heart and it is challenging, but there's always someone I feel like you need to, kind of be pouring into you or and also to like go on that journey with you too. And there can be a lot of friends, a lot of people we know, or friends who are new here, where they do feel compelled or prompted to write a book, but they're wrestling with that doubt. I certainly wrestled with that. I'm sure you can relate to that
Mhm.
because it's like, who would read this? Is it going to be good? And we can get caught up in all of those things, swirling in our minds. So, what encouragement, would you say to those people, those friends?
Yes, and I definitely want to turn this question back to you as well, because your book, like Fellowship Over Followers, like beautiful, and you can see that so much work went into that. So we both have to answer this
You're
one.
so kind.
Um, but the first thing I would say is that like God doesn't put a dream in your heart for just no reason. And I think I learned that pretty clearly through my testimony I just
Mhm.
shared with you guys. And I think the first thing is to just start. In Genesis 2, we learn that Adam, like he was the he got to live in this beautiful paradise, but his purpose was to work, and like God wants us to just start the work, and I think he will always show us like the next step. It's so easy to look at the 10th step or the
Mhm.
12th step, but just like look at the next one
Mhm.
and don't focus on your outcome. My fiance told me the other day, which he heard in a podcast with Dallas Jenkins, the correct creator of The Chosen. We
Yes,
love him.
yes.
Um, but he told me, he said, your job is not to feed the 5,000, it's just to provide the fish and loaves. And I was like, okay, that is so good because our work is just an offering. Like it
Yep.
really is nothing more. And God can say, this offering, three people are going to see it. Or, I'm going to use it in this really, private way. Or he can say, this offering, I'm going to blow it out of the water. Like you just watch. And I think that mentality
Mhm.
is something that we have to train ourselves to. Like, it's not about what comes out of this. It's just about having open hand and saying, this work is an offering, God. Like, I don't know what you're going to do with it, but it's an offering. And so that, and then the last thing I would say is just that, like, you'll never regret inviting God into every area of your life. As a mystery writer, I can tell you that just because my journey, like, coming back to Jesus was like, okay, Jesus, I give you this piece of my life. I give you this piece. And
Mhm.
my work was something I held tightly because, God, how are you going to use a mystery book for your
Yeah.
purpose? And I think like just inviting God into the work He's shown me time and time
Mhm.
again, I'll just never regret it. And that He'll give you what you need to keep going. Just get started, pretty much.
Man, oh, I am like so fired up by your answer. I'm so excited because no joke. I mean, one, I agree with everything you said, but seriously, no joke. I have a couple index cards on my bulletin. I'm filling them up as we go with Polaroids and things. Just haven't gone around to it. But literally, I haven't put a lot of stuff on it this year, and I wrote down that quote. This
Wow,
literally.
wow. It's such a good quote.
It's
Like,
so
okay,
good.
Dallas, coming
I
with
know.
the
Come on, Dallas Jenkins, the chosen. And so because I think we can all wrestle with that doubt and to be like, okay, Lord, like even this podcast, like it's just an overflow of my heart and like these conversations, I love them so much. Like I do this with my friends. We go get coffee and we do this, but it's like, okay, I want my life to be of service to the Lord and to whatever
Mhm.
I put my hand to honor him, but to be an offering to be like, okay, Lord, whatever you want to do. And again, going back to that one person out of the 99, one friend who was sitting here with us, like this is, it's for the gospel to reach you. Thinking about my first book, I was so overcome with fear and that doubt and being like, oh my gosh, like kind of going back to my testimony of like, well, not believing that I really had a story, I had a
Right.
voice, those kinds of things. But the Lord was like, Addie, like, d don't deny my faithfulness. Like, don't
Mhm.
deny how I've shown up for you. And I'm like, okay, Lord, it's, again, it's going back to that. It's not about me. It's
Right.
really putting the focus on him and showing, okay, what he has done in my life and just being a vessel and, offering those two loaves and the fish to whoever wants to come and to
Mhm.
be a friend and to learn more. And even in the beginning, of my book, I'm like truly my prayer is for the gospel to go forward and it's the first one. I'm hoping to get better as I go too. And so I'm encouraged that okay, we did the thing, with the Lord. But
Mhm.
in the beginning, I'm like I don't take it lightly, especially as a creative and designer. And I'm like, I wanted the gospel to be so focused, so present of like that is truly my prayer. I have it in the dedication of like I pray the gospel goes into the world. And so for any friend, who was bought it, I'm like, I was excited if one person bought it, honestly. It's like, okay, I'm, besides my family, but even, it's for anyone. And so, we can all wrestle with that doubt and again, like I'm even working on the second book and which is wild to
Love
think.
that.
I know, it's so exciting. Uh, but the reality too is like it's it's like okay, I know this is an avenue that God has encouraged me to step out in faith in. I really enjoy writing and things, and it's not by accident that I have all these book titles. I don't think it's by accident.
Right.
It's like, okay, Lord, like this is a really fun process that I get to see a different avenue of my creativity, but also partnership with him that he wants to bring that
Hmm.
out in me. And the biggest thing though, in some transparency is like this second one has been a little bit harder to write in a
Yeah.
weird way. And it's like that doubt will come back in and be like, wait, can I do this again?
Yeah.
And it's
Hmm.
like, I can, we all can, but it also is the reminder that, God, he, like you said, he doesn't give us something to just, sit on the shelf, to sit back and not do anything with it. But it's the encouragement to be like, no, like there's something in here that I think as you write, I mean, at least for the type of books I'm writing, focused on, Jesus and that relationship with him, where I really feel like it's a message that God has shown me, and like I
Hmm.
get wrecked by it, by the gospel again. And then it's like he's like, okay, now go share with other people. And I'm like, okay, like, okay, I guess I got to do that. But all that to say, we will all struggle with that doubt of like, whatever we're supposed to do. And one of the people who encouraged me, I look to a lot of other authors and, business people. Like, I'm like, well, how did they write that first one? And
Hmm.
to Donald Miller, he is such a good, I think, influence of where he just kind of did this like book workshop thing. And like he went through these 10 steps and stuff. And
Hmm.
the first one was like, all books are written by people. Like we're all people. Like,
Right. Right.
it's not like, this really, fancy person or, whatever. Like we're all human. And so we all have that
Hmm.
common thread. And it's like, okay, you don't have to reach a certain, I don't know, level of status or tier.
Right.
It's just okay, we can do it. But also it's a lot of hard work, so once you accept the fact that, yeah, everyone is just a person like you, and we're just taking the time to share our
Hmm.
story, which is like a grueling process, if you're being honest. It is hard.
Yeah. It's
So it is really hard, but then to go back to what you said of like taking that first step, I think it's really easy if we're visionary, people or creatives.
Mhm.
I absolutely am, where I'm like, I can put out the whole marketing plan and all this stuff, and like I know
Yeah.
the theme, I like kind of have the title, like I have the title, I have the cover in my head, but it's like, okay, Lord, what am I supposed to focus on today? Where do you want to
Yeah.
meet today in this writing?
Hmm.
And something that really helped me, especially because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Lord, I trust you. But, I didn't know I was doing the first one, which I want to cultivate a posture with every single thing I write, where it's like, Lord, I trust you. And like, I give you these words and, like inviting the Holy Spirit into it. Even, I shouldn't say even if, but it's like absolutely in all of our work. And you can think about, people who are writing, romance novels like rom-com
Right.
or mystery thrillers. I mean, you never know, but the creative aspect, God is still in our creativity. He is the author of
Hmm.
creativity. He is the one who's going to give us those ideas and inspiration, and also just to like bring joy to people's lives too, through writing and through connection and community. You never know what he wants to do, but I think we'll circle it back to the your job's not to feed the 5,000. It's just to bring what you have. And that's not by accident that we both had that on our radar this week.
Oh no, someone
Yeah.
needed to hear that. And it's so true with writing or anything. Like just keep offering it back and like God will bless it. Or if you need to do something else, he will show you. Even if he has to literally like rip your hair back like me, like he will show you what you need to
You
look
will.
at.
Yeah, I think that's so encouraging and just a good reminder that, we can't escape God's plan or will or purpose for
Hmm.
life. It's going to ebb and flow. It's going to look different in different seasons. It's like, okay, maybe we'll have to put this hat on here, but it doesn't mean that this piece of us doesn't exist. It's going to look different in different seasons
Right.
walking with him. So, such a good reminder. And for our final thoughts, just really thinking practically about the things we've talked about. What practices would you say, Lindsay, that we could adopt to just help us step out in faith in those everyday moments that you've been learning this past year, honestly?
Yes. I mean, I have a couple. I think For our conversation today and what we talked about, I would say first off is just every time you show up to do the work, whether that be writing or taking a sales meeting or, like just pray over it. Pray that God is going to use it. I think it's so simple, but like we don't do it
Yep.
enough. I know I don't. I show up and I'm like, okay, so let me pray over my keyboard. Like, it's sometimes like we forget how powerful that is. And like
Mhm.
that is a weapon. And so I think praying over the work and also
Mhm.
something that I am trying and trying again at, I'm not necessarily succeeding, is just trying to like keep my focus. There's a quote that says like the future belongs to the focused. And before you like get on your phone and start doom scrolling or like letting the world in, like talk to God, talk to him about the work you need to be doing and do it before you ever like let in those like outside noises, whatever it is for you. Like even if it's 2 or 3 minutes, I know like some people are moms and like things are crazy, but before you start planning like your own day, ask what God's plans are for you that day, even if it's just very quick. I think that's something I'm trying to get better at, and I'm struggling still. The phone addiction and stuff during this season of my life has been so real, and I think if we can like be so intentional about how we start our day as like a tithe almost, we'll see the work that God wants us to do because our mind isn't muddled first thing in the morning, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's so easy, like the message of the world, just putting, being like, oh, take care of yourself, do the things first you need to do.
Yeah.
Just like that independence, it
Hmm.
is really easy to get into that mindset where, oh, yeah, the world revolves around us, but really going back to the Lord every single day and laying that down of like, no, I'm taking a posture of a servant and wanting to be used by you. I'm reminded of, I have a lot of things in my mirror, in my bathroom, just getting ready in the morning. And I think I've had this sticky note a long time, but maybe since high school, I don't really remember, but it's just a simple thing, Jesus, what do you want to do through me today? Like, and it just
That's
helps me remind myself of like, okay, who do you want me to, pay attention to? My neighbors, or when I go get a Walmart pickup order, like, or go to
good.
Starbucks, like, how can I show your love? And maybe who do you want me to have a conversation with? Or even online, how can I encourage, friends and bring the gospel, bring the truth, not in my own strength, but in his strength, relying
Hmm.
on him. And so I love that and so practical, doing something first thing in the morning. And it can be a simple thing,
Hmm.
but 2 minutes, if that's all the time you have, then that can work. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's really encouraging. And man, I'm gonna take so many things from our conversation and just like, bring, I don't know, just so much joy out of just like what God is doing, in your life. I feel like there's such good practical tools and just really good encouragement just to bolster up that faith that, that we need at different seasons. So, Lindsay, just thank you so much for just sharing your story and just sharing everything that God's doing in your life, friend. I'm really, really thankful for you.
Thank you. I mean, I can't even begin to describe like what a gem you are to the community listening, to the world. Like the work that you've put out is so beautiful. If this is anyone's first time listening, Addie also designs clothes and she writes books and she does this podcast. I mean,
Aw.
she's like literally a Wonder Woman. And I'm just like thankful that you had me here, like talking with you and our new friendship. Like it's touched me and I feel near to Jesus just talking to you. So I just want to say thank you for having me at all.
You are too kind. Oh my goodness, you're so kind. I am just, man, I echo all the things about you. You're so nice and just I truly feel like, yeah, I have a sister in Christ. I mean, even again, going back to the email, I was like, I already do, but getting to actually have a conversation and be your new friend. I'm so thankful for the ways that God works and He's wired us to all to do different things. So, yeah, I mean, friends, I feel like, yeah, getting that encouragement, go, step into what God wants you to do, whether that's just, buying a stranger a cup of coffee. hearing their story. You have no idea. But in all seriousness, Lindsey, just thank you so much. And for our friends who are new here or who are new to you, where can they just follow your work and stay up to date with what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, social media age. Here we
Oh,
go.
here we go.
I'm on Instagram, Lindsey Lamar, TikTok, and Substack, Lindsey Writes Books. And I'm in Austin, Texas. You know, if you see
Yeah.
me, please say hi.
Yeah.
I am just around. I float around, you know, the internet and things like that. But my books are, you know, anywhere books are sold, and I'm grateful to even have the opportunity to be here, and I'm can't wait to like see what God's gonna do for both of us in the future. I'm gonna like be following your journey and all of your guests' journeys so closely. Just seriously, thank you so much.
It has been such my pleasure, Lindsey. Oh my gosh. And if I'm in Austin, you know, we'll go get tacos.
Oh yes, tacos,
Yes.
everything. We'll do the Barton Springs, all the
Oh
things. Lots
yes.
of
Oh
good
my
weather.
yes. Oh yeah, that's so true. Oh my goodness. And for our friends listening to, I'll link all the things in the show notes below. But friends, just thank you so much for listening. And I'm praying you have a wonderful week and continue to carry the gentle love of Jesus wherever you go.